In this video, I'm continuing my playthrough with 4 Warlocks. Each Warlock has their own mini backstory and their builds are designed with character roleplay in mind, so I would highly recommend that you start with the first video in this series. Link is in the pinned comment. Now that Reginald Ravenshadow, the probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium, has the headband of intellect in his possession, he's smart enough to know that his abilities could be better utilized if he made just a couple of adjustments, and his patron liked seeing his initiative and allowed him to make just a small tweak to his abilities, also known as a minor respec. Instead of Devil's Sight, Lefty now has Armor of Shadow so that he can cast Mage Armor without expending a spell slot. Lefty's also going to realize the power that magical items can have on his abilities, and as a result, he decided to equip the Club of Hill Giant Strength to boost his physical capabilities anytime it suits him. He picked up the Boots of Stormy Clamor as well, which can cause enemies to fall prone and take thunder damage from his spells. While Lefty was reveling in his newfound power, Pinky was experiencing the opposite. She had never felt weaker and more vulnerable after her defeat at the hands of Bonk. And it's going to take some time for her new powers as a sorceress to develop, so Pinky decided to take a little shortcut. After drinking a potion that Omalum had brewed, Pinky gained a new Illithid power, Survival Instinct, which can prevent death. She's also going to stop holding back, and she slurped up all the rest of the Mind Flayer parasites that they'd collected so far, adding Psionic Backlash, Favorable Beginnings, and Shield of Thralls to her capabilities. She's going to be on the lookout for more parasites to enhance herself even further. The party headed towards their next adventure, sailing towards the Grimforge, and Lefty took control of the ship. When a Dwergar ship pulled up next to them and started asking questions, Lefty did something he normally wouldn't consider. See, normally Lefty wouldn't use his physical strength to solve his problems, but with the Club of Hill Giant Strength, an elixir of the Colossus, and an encouraging tune played by Jack, he shoved the Dwergar into the water and started a fight. He immediately blasted another one into the water, gaining a huge advantage for the party. Pinky and Lefty's imps swarmed the Dwergar's backline. Hunger of Hadar from Pinky was dealing massive damage to everybody, a big damage fireball from Bonk, and a lucky knockback from Jack. The encounter came to an end pretty quickly, and we were free to finish sailing to the Grimforge. I assassinated a couple more Dwergar and looted a ring that can cast invisibility, which I gave to Pinky so that she has more defensive options. Hopefully she'll be able to find some good ways to utilize it. Lefty came across a gnome that had some pretty impressive explosives, so naturally, Reginald Ravenshadow, probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium, saw an opportunity to acquire a powerful weapon and stole the rune powder barrel. When the gnome tried to run off, he actually managed to nick a rune powder vial out of her pocket as well, and he's going to wait patiently for the perfect moment to use these devastating explosives. Pinky talked to the locals and found out that they were willing to turn on True Soul Near.
Help friend free near, then you and my chums grind him up.
So Pinky used her charming personality to negotiate half the spoils from the battle, but we do need to kill a scrying eye first.
You've seen that weird orb floating about? Knife it, and don't get caught.
While the party was trying to figure out how to covertly take this thing down, Lefty Misty stepped up to it, grabbed it, chucked it off a cliff, followed up with another Misty step, and Eldritch blasted this thing down before returning to the party. This guy has gained a lot of confidence recently and seems to be taking the initiative a lot more than he used to. Maybe he does have a shot at becoming the manager someday. We needed to get rid of a pile of rubble between us and True Soul Near, so the party suggested Lefty use his rune powder barrel to clear the path, but Lefty knows better than to waste such a powerful explosives when he could use a couple of simpler smoke powder barrels instead. So he put some down and blasted it all to bits. As planned, a fight broke out and Bonk had positioned himself perfectly to protect Pinky from any approaching attackers, while Reginald teleported to a more advantageous position to fight from. The fight was going well, but when an enemy ranger fired past Bonk to pin down Pinky with an entangling arrow, he rushed the attacker in hopes of freeing Pinky as quickly as possible. He wasn't able to break the caster's concentration, but he did deal enough damage to allow for one of the members of the coup to finish the job. Lefty finished up the combat with one last Eldritch blast, and Pinky quickly looted the corpse to grab the Mind Flayer parasite and a pair of boots that's going to allow her an extra Misty Step each short rest. She saved the parasite for later, and the party headed towards the Forge. The battle against the Forge's guardian, Grim, went poorly in a hurry. We dropped the hammer onto Grim twice, but he retaliated by downing Jack. attack. In a surprising move, Lefty heroically got the behemoth's attention and lured it into position for a third hammer smash, and he was downed for his efforts. But he succeeded, and Pinky dropped the hammer a third time, leaving the protector of the forge at just 13 health remaining. Pinky has become friends with the dog Scratch and summoned him to get Lefty back on his feet, and then cast Survival Instinct onto him so if he took lethal damage again, he'd be able to stay in the fight. He didn't end up getting hit, but he did appreciate the recognition of his heroism and magical ability, and he finished off the Forge Guardian with one last Eldritch Blast. This is kind of a big moment for Lefty because he realized that maybe he didn't have to be selfish. Maybe, just maybe, he could be a hero instead. I used the forge to craft an adamantine heavy armor and an adamantine shield, both of which will go completely unused for a while since none of my party is proficient in the use of armor or shields. Now, Lefty wanted to give this whole hero thing a try, so when he heard screams and smelled something burning, he actually rushed into action, but he was immediately stopped by an aggressive guard who was ready to attack him just because of his race. He did manage to intimidate her into backing down, and although his enthusiasm had taken a hit, he still rushed forward to help. All the guards here seemed completely incompetent, so Lefty blasted the door open with a single cast and made his way inside. Counselor Floric was trapped behind a broken door, so Lefty let loose another blast to secure her freedom when something tragic happened. One of the idiot guards moved between him and the door, eating the damage of one of his Eldritch Blasts in the process. The other blast freed the counselor, but the very racist and otherwise completely incompetent guards turned on Lefty in a heartbeat. He tried his best to escape their wrath. He jumped down to the first floor, even taking a little damage, and he tried to find cover deeper inside the burning building, but these guards didn't care that there was still a man to save on the second floor. They let loose multiple arrows of fire to light this building up even more in an attempt to flush Lefty out of his hiding spot. And he ran from the fire, but it was too late. He had taken too much damage and he collapsed, begging for mercy. But there's no mercy coming his way, just another fire arrow that was let loose and covered the entire room in flames. Nobody came to Lefty's aid, and the soldiers never let up in their assault. Lefty was burned to a crisp and left dead on the ground. His party wasn't even aware of what was happening, and they even spoke with Counselor Floric outside and accepted a reward for saving her. When Lefty didn't come out of the building though, with the rest of the guards, the party went in to find him roasted, and Bonk pulled out a scroll of Revivify and used it on Lefty. Jack played a quick song of rest to get Lefty away from death's door, and they presented him with his new lightning staff, a reward for saving Counselor Floric, and then they all left the burning building. Everybody except for Lefty, because he still had some unfinished business. There's still a man calling for help on the second floor. Before addressing the man, Lefty assured his own safety by blasting open the door and positioning a water barrel to slow the spread of the fire. Then he stood calmly and watched as the fire approached. He spoke to the man who was begging for help, but instead, Lefty attacked, blasting Benrin in the face to put him out of his misery. He didn't have any loot on him, so Lefty just jumped to safety, getting kissed by the flames on his way out. But this didn't do anything to calm the rage inside him. He was still furious over what had happened to him. So when he detected an ambush lying in wait for him in a nearby building, he set up an ambush of his own. The Club of Hill Giant Strength lets him jump great heights straight onto the roof, and he was able to sneak behind his would-be assailant. There's no point in talking to this man and giving him an advantage. Lefty knows that much now. He dropped Hunger of Hadar right onto this guy, blinding and surprising him. Then he blasted him from behind once while Hunger of Hadar ripped more life away with acid and cold damage. At literally 1 health, Lefty put this guy down with a combination of force, acid, cold, and lightning damage. Upon rejoining the party, Lefty found a woman who appeared to be up to no good, so he opened fire immediately, blasting her off the cliffside, and his party was not used to this degree of instant hostility and violence, and it was clear the woman was dead before they even had a chance to stop him. They all insisted that he take a walk to clear his head, and they said they'll handle the Githyanki patrol on their own. Pinky knows that the Githyanki aren't too fond of outsiders, so she disguised herself herself as a Githyanki for the conversation, but they still seemed skeptical, so she tried to lie that she was from the Githyanki creche. Despite giving it her best effort, she failed to convince them and a fight broke out. Pinky started with Hunger of Hadar to blind all of her attackers, and Bonk rushed into the battlefield to aid her. Pinky used Nir's boots to Misty Step to high ground, then commanded her imp to destroy the ladders leading her way, and with Pinky inaccessible, the Githyanki attacked Bonk with a massive 23 damage ranged attack that knocked him to the ground, followed by 9 more damage. He's in danger, but Jack provided a heal from a distance and did so completely unnoticed, so he was able to take the high ground with Pinky and put a hex onto the patrol's commander. Bonk took cover in hopes of avoiding more ranged attacks, but the Githyanki teleported right next to him and paralyzed his entire body with magic. Things are not looking good for the party. Jack did blast one of the Githyanki back into Hunger of Hadar, ensuring their death, but he's not in a position to help Bonk at all. Now, Reginald Ravenshadow, the probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium, was returning from his walk, and he was really not shocked to see that the diplomatic option had failed. Now, he had no intention of playing the hero anymore, but his party members had revived him in his time of need, so he saw this as an opportunity to return the favor so he wouldn't be in their debt. He added his own Hunger of Hadar to the battlefield to make it even harder for the Githyanki to approach Bonk and deliver the final blow, but unfortunately it made no difference as the leader teleported past the obstruction and sliced Bonk to pieces. With the soldiers having made their way out of her first Hunger of Hadar, Pinky repositioned it onto Bonk's killer, putting the Githyanki into a horrible situation. Pinned between two walls, slowed and blinded by Pinky's spell, the party took turns blasting the remaining Githyanki to death. And after the fight, Pinky ended her spell and rushed in to revive Bonk as quickly as possible. For once, the party was entirely on the same page, and the only words on that page were, "Fuck the Githyanki." They headed into the mountain pass to find the Githyanki creche, and a helpful merchant along the way sold some powerful gear to the party and also requested that they steal a Githyanki egg to sell to her.
Just bring me an egg.
Pinky, of course, tried to negotiate better terms and was able to convince Lady Esther to pay her for the job up front. Lefty doesn't want to get slaughtered so easily again, so he put on some clothing that increased his dexterity and bracers that increase his armor class. With mage armor, his AC is now up to 19, leaving him in a much safer position than before. He might be using the Spell Sparkler staff to enhance his magic during combat, but he's smart enough to know when to equip his Club of Hill Giant Strength and use its power to unstick the gondola wheel. He's also smart enough to know that you don't put your entire party on a moving platform in Baldur's Gate 3. So he proceeded to the creche alone and let his party catch up by traveling to the waypoint. Now, I guess I didn't record this next part, but we snuck into the Githyanki creche. The party didn't want to launch a full assault without gaining information first, and Lefty begrudgingly agreed as long as they all promised to start blasting as soon as things turned hostile. We purchased some more powerful items from the quartermistress and then explored the creche. Nobody seemed to mind us since we had managed to get past the guards in the front without being noticed. Pinky noticed there were several Mind Flayer parasites and started stealing them. But she was accused of committing a criminal act. No problem. The check to talk my way out of this is 10, and I have a +9 on the roll with advantage courtesy of the Friends cantrip. While this was happening, Lefty scooped up the parasite, which was far too obvious, so I shut the door so we could get some privacy and work this whole thing out. Pinky and Lefty's imps basically did all the work, landing 6 sting attacks in a row and leaving our enemy with 1 health, and we let Bonk do the honors of securing our first kill in the Githyanki creche. Getting into this fight ended up being a blessing in disguise, as Pinky was eager to increase the power of her Illithid powers even more. The Aberration Hunter's Amulet we looted gives a Githyanki advantage on intelligence saving throws, so Pinky disguised herself as a Githyanki, fooling the amulet into lending her its power. She then took a seat and needs to succeed on saving throws to give her Illithid potential even more strength. With advantage on the first roll, it was simple. The second roll was failed, but Pinky is willing to do anything to succeed here, so I used an inspiration to try again and passed the check. The final roll had a charisma option, but it requires the help of Pinky's patron, who has cut her off from any future power or aid. So Pinky once again relied on her intelligence saving throws, and thanks to having advantage on the roll, she succeeded. As a result of this process, all of Pinky's Illithid powers now cost a bonus action instead of an action, and to celebrate, Pinky stuck 4 more of those wrigglers into her her brain, including Cole the Weak, Luck of the Far Realms, Charm, and Perilous Stakes. Cole the Weak specifically is of great importance because it's going to help Pinky to execute enemies that she attacks. Any enemy that's left with less health than she has tadpoles is going to be executed, and it'll deal psychic damage to other nearby enemies. With 9 tadpoles already used, this is going to really help Pinky to finish off low health opponents, especially since her battle magic is not that strong. We headed to the hatchery to steal ourselves a Githyanki egg, but Lefty was baited by this perfect looking rock. It's the perfect rock to land on, but it has a teleportation trap inscribed on it. He was teleported into a jail cell and the Githyanki attacked. As promised though, his party immediately took action to defend him. Lefty misty stepped out of the cage and tried to knock the hatchery's custodian off the ledge, but was counterspelled and left completely vulnerable. So he commanded his imp to attack in hopes that it draws the enemy's fire. Bonk charged and attacked the nearest enemy and opened a bloody wound in them, and Pinky attacked as well but only dealt 3 damage due to her general lack of skill in battle magic. Despite all his armor class, Lefty was dropped in just 1 turn to a shatter spell followed by a 20 damage arrow to the face. But his imp likely saved his life by drawing the fire of the follow-up attack. The enemy tried to disarm Bonk, but you can't disarm a packed weapon, and Bonk retaliated with Hellish Rebuke, only for it to get counterspelled. At least we know there won't be any more counterspells coming out to stop our next round of attacks. Jack used Healing Word to get Lefty back on his feet, and Pinky misty stepped to his side and tried to slow the Gith attackers, but only managed to affect one of them with her spell. Still though, it gave Bonk the opportunity to cut this slowed opponent down with 2 swift strikes. On his next turn, he cut down the next Githyanki and actually pulled out his short bow of all things and used an arrow of roaring thunder to knock the final enemy into the acid right onto a trap that teleported them into a cage. Pinky covered the cage in Hunger of Hadar and Lefty blasted them through the bars to finish the fight, with all 4 Warlocks having sustained substantial injuries but all still alive. Jack played a healing Song of Rest to get us all battle ready, and we pocketed the Githyanki egg to later give to Lady Esther. At this point, Lefty said enough is enough. It's time to purge this place of all Githyanki life forms. All this combat gave my party the experience to go to level 6, which is a significant level for Pinky and Lefty. Pinky can no longer level up as a Warlock, so she put her first point into Sorcerer as a Storm Sorcerer. This will allow her to fly as a bonus action after casting a spell, which should really help a lot to get her out of harm's way a bit more easily. Lefty was able to put his first point into Wizard, massively increasing his versatility as he can now learn spells off of spell scrolls, which he barely knew how to read before he got the Headband of Intellect. He always held them upside down by accident without realizing it, but not anymore. Check this guy out, learning how to cast Featherfall right off a scroll. Very impressive, buddy. But he's most interested in casting Magic Missile, as it literally can't miss, and that's just the kind of consistency the Archfey is looking for from candidates for the manager position at his left-handed Wand Emporium. Jack finally tuned his inspirational speeches at the College of Valor's 2-minute online course, and he can now increase his allies' attack damage from weapons or attack rolls with Bardic Inspiration. He also picked up Cloud of Daggers because he was starting to feel a little left out in the area of effect spam style combat. Bonk was also feeling a little left out, so he grabbed Hunger of Hadar so we can black out entire battlefields. And just in time too, because it's time to fight the Githyanki Inquisitor, who decided to kill Pinky when she admitted that she's been hearing the voice of the Absolute.
If you hear that voice at all, then you are infected. And it is my people who need protecting from you. Hitasith!
Pinky threw down the first Hunger of Hadar before closing the doors and running away. Bonk covered her retreat with his own Hunger of Hadar, and once she was clear, Lefty added yet more Hunger of Hadar to the bridge. Then we just watched and waited patiently as our enemies tried to approach. They basically all died just trying to get to us, and we knocked the Inquisitor back into our spells as he tried to approach. I guess there's a bug though, where the blind from Hunger of Hadar goes away if you walk through multiple of them, and the blind was the only thing keeping him from doing this. Bonk rushed to Pinky's aid, drinking an elixir of Hill Giant strength during the run and using it to throw the Inquisitor back towards the spell before slashing him for 20 damage. Jack could see what Bonk was going for and Eldritch blasts him fully back into Hunger of Hadar, allowing the spell's cold damage to finish the job. We're all done here in the creche, so I had Lefty wave goodbye to Vlaakith on our way out because it's honestly one of my favorite cutscenes. The wave is too perfect. It's amazing. Now I don't know why, but this save file seems like it's maybe just a little bit corrupted somehow. It's a very old save file. I obviously haven't gotten back to the series in a while, and the issue I'm having is the game is not recognizing when I have an item necessary to complete a quest. It also happened with Nir's head when I tried to give it to the Myconid Sovereign, so I guess it's a good thing I got paid up front for this job because I was not able to turn in the Githyanki egg over to Lady Esther. My party was having a lot of fun butchering enemies with Hunger of Hadar, so we backtracked a little and slaughtered some gnolls in a choke point. The NPCs even got on board, shoving the gnolls back into the spell with us. After the fight, I convinced them to give me all the loot and then headed to the Zhentarim hideout to say hello. Well, I guess the Zhentarim didn't appreciate how I ended up with all the loot because the guys we saved aren't doing so hot. One of them is dead and the other nearly there. The Zhentarim were ready to kill me too, but a passive history check got me in their good graces. I had to finish Rugen off, which honestly seemed like a mercy at this point, although he didn't see it that way.
No, please!
And just like that, everyone profits.
I persuaded Brem to free his pet artist with no cost incurred on my end, and I also purchased the Titan String bow because it's really good and you never know when somebody might need it. Next, I headed to the swamp to talk to the hag, but she made the mistake of insulting Lefty's ability to read.
Oh, the wizard thinks he's smart because he can read. How precious.
Look, Lefty's still a little sensitive about his newfound ability to read, so that type of comment is completely unacceptable. He didn't want any interruptions, so he sent his imp to distract the hag's reinforcements that were on the way. We blasted this hag pretty aggressively and got her down to 41 health, but she slipped through our fingers back into her lair, leaving us with no choice but to follow her in. First though, we drowned the hag's red cap reinforcements in a sea of Hunger of Hadar. On the way to the hag, we found some of her slaves and got the jump on them with an attack from an invisible imp. We made short work of them during the surprise round of combat, and after we finished up, we jumped down to the heart of the hag's lair. Since Bonk has Volo's magic eye and can see invisibility, Pinky used her ring to cast invisibility onto him and let him go scout and reveal the hag. During the fight, Bonk used the guaranteed damage from Hunger of Hadar to clear out 3 of the hag's illusions, and we otherwise just blasted the hag with as much damage as possible until she stopped the combat to try to make a deal. If Lefty was talking, we almost certainly would have finished the job, but she chose to speak with Bonk, and he wants as much power as possible so he can better protect Pinky, so he makes a deal with the hag to gain +1 to his charisma. I don't know why I didn't use this right away, but I eventually end up using it like halfway through Act 2 to bring his charisma up to 18, so at some point he'll have slightly higher charisma later in the video. My last stop in Act 1 was the Phase Spider Matriarch, which honestly didn't amount to much. I killed her off and tried to access the Necromancy of Thay book with the Dark Amethyst, but it doesn't seem to recognize that I have both, so it's bugged and not working. That's fine, I didn't really need it, but hopefully these bugs don't cause issues as I go through the rest of the game. With that, the party headed into the Shadow-Cursed Lands, also known as Act 2. Our first encounter was with some Harpers that were having a little trouble staying out of the shadows. When the man came back infected by the Shadow Curse, Lefty was honestly more intrigued than anything else, but couldn't really think on it for long because the shadows attacked. Once this battle was done, we were invited to Last Light Inn by the Harpers we saved and made our way over. But not before Lefty learned how to summon Shovel.
Oh, shit-pilling toe rag!
Shovel might not benefit from the Pact of the Chain's extra attack, but he's got enough personality to make up for it, so this will be Lefty's new primary choice of familiar. After a bit of a struggle, one of the tieflings Jack saved by not exterminating the entire Druid Grove vouched for us and we were let in. I purchased a staff from the Quartermaster that allows one cast of Fireball and I gave it to Jack. Then I picked up the Cloak of Protection and Amulet of the Harpers for Bonk. For some reason, Damon is dead and I don't know why. So if you know why, tell me in a comment because I'm stumped. I did loot his corpse though, and at least I got the Dark Fire shortbow, so I gave that over to Pinky so she has resistance to fire and cold damage and she can cast haste once per long rest. Then the party headed into the inn and saw Raphael sitting with Mole, and Bonk mumbled something about needing to check something out and he ran back outside, but the rest of the party went forward and talked with Raphael. The conversation wasn't particularly noteworthy, so we moved on and Jack saw Alfira and chatted with her and learned of the other tiefling situation.
If they're not dead, they're in Moonrise.
And he promises to find them.
Thank you. If anyone can manage it, you can.
We need protection from the Shadow Curse before we can leave, so we headed upstairs to talk to Isabel, but this gets out of control in a hurry. We did receive the blessing of Selûne, but at the end of the conversation, Flaming Fist Marcus arrives with an army and intends on capturing Isabel alive. As for the others, not so much. Pinky tried to do a pro gamer play and throw a potion of invisibility at Isabel and herself to keep them both safe, but Bong's magic eye stripped Isabel of her invisibility just moments after she got it. I did not anticipate that happening, so I guess it's on to plan B. Pinky used her bonus action to cast the Illithid power Shield of Thralls onto herself and then intentionally provokes an opportunity attack from Marcus. The shield bursts and stuns Marcus as I'd hoped it would, giving my party a better chance of surviving this encounter. One winged horde lands a hit on Isabel, but after that, Bonk was able to cast Hunger of Hadar on the entryway in hopes that it would slow the others' approach. Now, Bonk's gonna be the captain of unforeseen consequences in this combat because Hunger of Hadar started butchering some of the Flaming Fist that were in the room directly below us. They weren't even in combat, which made it even worse because they're taking damage constantly every few seconds. I'll be sure to check in on them later to make sure they're okay, but for now, Lefty used Magic Missile and he forgot to have his Spell Sparkler staff equipped because he was carrying a torch out in the shadows. A less intelligent man might not have been quite so bothered by this failure, but Lefty is too smart now to make such mistakes, so he shamefully walked to the corner to sulk about it. Shovel took some initiative and burst outside the doorway so aggressively that it frightened the winged horror on the balcony, leaving it frozen in fear for 2 turns. The rest of the winged horror were able to make it through Hunger of Hadar and surround Isabel, so Pinky used slow, but only landed it on Marcus and one of the winged horrors. Lefty, intent on fixing his mistake and quite frankly showing off his power, used a potion of speed to gain a second action and equip the correct staff before firing off a magic missile at Marcus. Bonk finished off Marcus, then decides the people downstairs have had enough and disables Hunger of Hadar. He landed a great cleave, but unfortunately hit Isabel with it too, and she said that's our last warning, so I'd better avoid hitting her with any more attacks. Pinky uses her Illithid power to land a critical strike on one of the winged horror while also killing another thanks to Cole the Weak. As a Great Old One Warlock, critical strikes have a chance to frighten my enemies, so the winged horror won't even be able to move on its next turn. With the fight now essentially under control, I fired off spells at all the remaining enemies until we had won. And as promised, I headed downstairs to check on the victims of Bonk's unfortunate Hunger of Hadar. Oh, wow, that's crazy. They got in here too? Oh, thank goodness you survived, Counselor Floric. You know, we got the worst of it. Okay, bye. I joined up with some Harpers to ambush Karnas, and once we were done slaughtering him and all of his goblin allies, we took the Moon Lantern in his possession and freed the pixie inside. She granted us full protection from the Shadow Curse, even in the darkest areas that the Light of Selûne couldn't protect us from. After ambushing Karnas, I found myself as the one getting ambushed, but thankfully Pinky has the alert feat and can't be surprised. My party gathered on the rooftop and started blasting the Mazels with everything we had, but that didn't stop them them from wrapping a rope around Pinky's neck and basically kidnapping her with teleportation magic. Too bad for them, we were in the perfect position to blast them away and free Pinky, winning the encounter. Almost level 7, I went out in search of a fight and gained that last bit of experience I needed. Pinky got her 2nd level as a sorcerer, taking the meta magic to twin cast spells or increase the range of her magic. Lefty specialized as an abjuration wizard, and Jack took the feat dual wielder so he can use a staff in each hand, but for some reason Bonk opted not to level up at this time and wandered off into the shadows, clearly on a personal mission. Bonk's first stop was the House of Healing, but he wasn't allowed in by the sister at the front desk. Naturally, he tried to convince her that he'd picked up some sort of diabolical disease, and he even used the Dark One's luck to add 1d10 to the roll. Against all odds, we landed a 13 against this 14 difficulty class check. So here's what it looks like when you're bad at pretending to be sick. Oof. Guess we are doing this the usual way and slashing our way in. With the sister dead, I looted a ring from a nearby skeleton, then grabbed another ring from the cemetery nearby and rejoined the party and asked Pinky for a moment alone with her. Well, Bonk's a classy guy. This dude gets down on one knee and everything and pledged an oath of devotion to Pinky so strong that it infused him with the power to better protect her from harm. Bonk has officially become an oath of devotion paladin, and the strength of his promise to her was so strong that it unraveled the past by just a little bit, removing 1 level of Warlock and adding it to Paladin. Bonk now has 5 levels as a Warlock and 2 levels as a Paladin Oath of Devotion. He took the fighting style protection so he can defend Pinky while he's by her side, and the ring he gave her lets him cast Warding Bond so that he can share in the damage she takes, cutting it in half. Bonk put on the adamantine heavy armor and took the heavy armor master feat, which reduces damage from non-magical attacks. He also shifted one of his eldritch invocations over to repelling blast so he can knock enemies away from Pinky even from a distance. I equipped a very suboptimal sword in Bonk's main hand for now, and I'll be looking for a replacement soon. Moonrise Towers might not be the premier location for brand new couples to vacation, but it does have some pretty good shopping. Lefty picked up the risky ring here, giving him advantage on all attacks, and I picked up some other gear that I might use later, I don't know. But I didn't find a good sword for Bonk. I tossed the Titan String bow onto him in case I ever need a good ranged attack, but we're going to pop back over to Act 1 to pick up some weapons for Bonk. I didn't record it, but I grabbed Fowler Aluve for Bonk, and I also went to the Githyanki Kresh to get the Blood of Lathander. I didn't go through the quest or anything, I just ripped it out of its housing and blasted all the traps to disarm them. Pretty easy for a squad of Warlocks to accomplish. Now that Lefty is an Abjuration Wizard, he has Arcane Ward. Whenever he takes damage, Arcane Ward will reduce the damage he takes by the number of stacks it has, and then lose 1 stack. This protection is charged by casting Abjuration spells, such as Armor of Agathis or Mage Armor, and lucky for me, I can cast Mage Armor without using a spell slot. And Lefty's gonna take it 1 step further, because if you put on some regular armor, it cancels out your Mage spell, so then you can just put your clothing back on and cast Mage Armor again to gain another stack of Arcane Ward, basically allowing me to fully stack my Arcane Ward anytime I'm out of combat. We took all of our fancy new builds over to the Shambling Mound, but it couldn't even get through all of the Hunger of Hadar spam that we put down, and even Jack joined in with the fun with his own cloud of daggers. Over at the Toll House, Pinky used her charisma to convince Garangoth Thorm to just give up on life, and I'd hoped to be able to apply this same strategy to the rest of the Thorms, but Pinky isn't strong with Constitution saving throws or sleight of hand, and even with advantage on the roll, I failed to trick Thizbald Thorm. We've got to fight our way out of this one. We took down all the zombies first, and when Thizbald tried to approach, we knocked him back with Eldritch Blasts. But standing a little too close to the edge got Pinky downed and Jack hurt. Plus, Pinky was concentrating on haste for Lefty, so he was disabled next turn as well. Jack, of course, healed Pinky and blasted Thizbald away before he and Pinky took a step back for safety, but the timing couldn't be worse, because Thizbald had just blacked out and was vulnerable to attack. Bonk to the rescue, he more than made up for it by landing 2 massive Divine Smites onto Thizbald Thorm before he recovered, and Lefty finished the job with an Eldritch Blast. Up next was going to be Malice Thorm, but with a difficulty class of 21 on the check, Pinky missed the roll by a fair bit. I could have used Inspiration, but I honestly just wasn't that intimidated by Malice, so I just let the fight take place, and here's how it went. After killing Malice, we headed for Shar's temple and found Raphael standing outside it. For some reason, Bonk mumbled something about us forgetting to loot a chest back in the House of Healing, so he took off to do that, but the rest of the party spoke with Raphael. He wants us to kill a creature inside Shar's temple, but he didn't offer any reward or anything, so Pinky basically just said not interested, and Raphael vanished. Shortly afterwards, Bonk caught up with the party and we all headed into Shar's temple together. We had to fight our way through this temple, killing off Dark Justiciars and the Umbral Tremors that were spawning them. It wasn't particularly difficult though, and once we finished, we met an ugly undead named Balthazar. But he's not the real treasure in this area. The real treasure is of course behind this door, and it's the Callous Glow Ring. This ring causes every hit to deal 2 radiant damage as well. And Lefty slipped this ring on his finger, eager to give it a try. He asked Jack to cast light onto Bonk's weapon, which seems a bit redundant since it's the Blood of Lathander mace, but Jack agreed so Lefty could test his new ring out on a cloaker. And the damage was fantastic. Magic Missile is now dealing a massive amount of radiant damage on every cast. We found Raphael's enemy, Yurgir, and after some convincing, Pinky managed to talk her way out of a fight as she promised to find a way to break Yurgir free of his contract with Raphael. Yurgir has agreed to kill all of the Dark Justiciars in Shar's temple, but one such Justiciar has had its mind split out into a horde of rats, so we're going rat hunting. Bonk suggested that it'll be faster if we split up and surprises everybody by suggesting he pair off with Lefty and Pinky go with Jack. Everybody agrees though, and Pinky and Jack find themselves facing off against a massive horde of rats that really aren't any danger because they can't get up to where we're standing. Pinky and Jack just threw some caustic bulbs on the ground and are letting the rats run into the acid and die in mass. Meanwhile, Bonk asks Lefty to help him with a different task. Bonk wants to kill Yurgir, and Lefty says he'll do it, but Bonk is gonna owe him a favor. Additionally, he requested that Bonk equip Fowler Eluve and have Jack cast light on it. Bonk managed to find Jack just before he and Pinky ran off to start exterminating rats, and Jack did cast light onto the sword. The battle strategy Lefty recommended to best Yurgir is simple. Bonk is to simply wait near Yurgir and activate his sword's shriek ability at the start of combat. Lefty will take care of the rest. Lefty commanded his invisible familiar, Shovel, to make the first attack. This doesn't surprise the ever-alert Yurgir, but his army of Maragons sure didn't see it coming. Yurgir fired off some grenades at Bonk and turned invisible. Well, that's just great because Bonk's gonna pick these grenades up because you never know when you're gonna need 4 orthonic hand bombs. Then he activated Fowler Eluve's Shriek and walked over to Yurgir. Thankfully, his magic eye reveals Yurgir, so he's done his job. Lefty then used a 3rd level Warlock spell slot to fire off 5 magic missiles plus 1 more because of the amulet he's wearing. Lefty has also started wearing the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, which inflicts reverberation whenever an enemy takes thunder, lightning, or radiant damage. And Yurgir is about to take a lot of all 3 of these. Lefty's first 6 magic missiles deal 79 damage, spread out across Force, Thunder, Lightning, and Radiant. After chugging a potion of speed, Lefty fired off another 6 missiles and Yurgir fell to a lethal blow. Jack and Pinky had just finished their fight with the Dark Justiciar, dealing most of the damage by simply knocking it off the cliffside. So imagine their surprise when they found Bonk standing by Yurgir's dead body and surrounded by a horde of angry Maragon. Now of course they helped finish the battle and made quick work of it, but Pinky has some questions for Bonk. Bonk finally comes clean to Pinky. When he had wished for her to become the source of her own power, his fiend patron was very disappointed and disapproved of his decision and decided to invoke a sneaky clause in Bonk's contract that allowed his contract to be sold to another fiend and the terms renegotiated. And of course, the fiend who purchased said contract was none other than Raphael. Bonk couldn't afford to give up any power because he needs all of it to keep Pinky safe, so he agreed to slay one of Raphael's enemies no matter the cost, as well as to never raise a hand in opposition of Raphael. He had avoided Raphael earlier because he just didn't want the party to know that that's his new patron. Pinky said that they'll find some way to deal with it together, and the party was about to enter Shadowfell when Jack objected. Jack said they need to go to Moonrise Towers and save the tieflings. He'd received word that they're alive and being held in the dungeon, but he needs the party's help to break them out. Although, let's be honest, he mostly just wanted Lefty's help, because Reginald Ravenshadow, probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium, has become a force to be reckoned with. He headed into Moonrise Towers and absolutely eviscerated anyone who stood in his way. Every short rest, he could nearly one-shot any 2 guards in the prison with the help of Bonk's shrieking sword. Lefty wasn't doing this out of the goodness of his heart, of course. He now has Jack owing him a favor. The party cleared out the entire prison, and the tieflings and Ironhand gnomes were both set free and taken to Last Light Inn. Jack rushed up to the inn to give Alfira the good news when he noticed that she seemed awfully close with the tiefling named Lacrissa.
You're here! You're all right! How?
Alfira's heart belongs to another, and Jack can't help but feel a little led on. So he's left with a choice. He can be a petty, jealous, disgusting little man, or he can be a total Chad. He can be a hero. Of course he chose to be a hero, and for saving Alfira, Jack received the potent robe, which adds your charisma modifier to the damage of any cantrips you cast. Now Lefty couldn't have known that he was going to need to call this favor in so soon, but he told Jack to hand over those potent robes, and this stung a little, but it's honestly for the best. It's better to move on than become obsessive and toxic. Jack gave the potent robe over to Lefty, which has now increased the power of his Eldritch Blast even more. After leaving Last Light Inn, the party stumbled their way into an ambush. It wasn't a difficult fight, and afterwards they had all reached level 8. Pinky enhanced her metamagic to cause the target of her spells to have disadvantage on saving throws. Lefty picked up Arcane Lock and Knock to achieve full mastery over any and all doors. Jack grabbed the Glyph of Warding as a level 5 bard, and Bonk can now make his weapon into a sacred weapon, giving it an even higher chance to hit. With that, the party finally headed down into Shadowfell. Balthazar was standing with the Night Song, and Lefty said that he's going to be taking this fight on alone. He needs to prove to the Archfey patron that he deserves a promotion, and the rest of the party agreed not to interfere no matter what. Lefty is determined to win this battle, and not just with sheer power. He intends to display full mastery over the battlefield. At first he thought about ambushing his opponent, but decided that wouldn't be an impressive enough of a victory, so he engaged his enemy in a fair one-on-one fight, or so he thought. Balthazar summoned an army to battle by his side, and drank a potion of speed before blasting Lefty with Ray of Sickness twice. And even though Lefty dodged the first Ray of Sickness, the second hit and poisoned him, giving him disadvantage on attack rolls. He truly will need to think creatively if he's going to win this fight, and that's when he realized what he needed to do. Lefty had used his rune powder barrel at the perfect moment, using exactly the right tool for the job. Balthazar's army was almost entirely decimated in one glorious explosion. But Balthazar himself was still quite healthy. No matter, Lefty knew his time to strike would be fast approaching. Balthazar dropped Cloud Kill on the Lefty, which inflicted a ton of damage, but nothing that a supreme healing potion can't fix. Lefty killed a skeleton and just needs to survive one more turn. Balthazar tried a Ray of Sickness, but Lefty activated Shield to negate the attack, and it was finally his time to strike. After Misty stepping towards Balthazar, Lefty Eldritch blasts 2 skeletons, but only 1 attack connects. Still though, he's got some breathing room, so he walked right over to Balthazar and ended his turn. Unfortunately, a skeleton librarian blinded Lefty, and his constitution saving throws are bad. He needs to put a stop to this fight right now, and Balthazar has just lost his turn due to becoming lethargic after his potion of speed wore off. Lefty drank a potion of speed of his own and used both of his level 3 spell slots to absolutely end Balthazar's existence once and for all. Despite his blindness, he was able to kill both skeletons next turn with Eldritch Blasts, and the victory was his. He couldn't truly appreciate his victory for another 6 turns because that's how long it took for him to shake off the blindness, but while Reginald Ravenshadow could see nothing, he heard the whisper of his patron say 3 words.
I see you.
The rest of the party joined Lefty and congratulated him, then they freed the Night Song and headed for Moonrise Towers. The first battle at Moonrise Towers can be difficult, even more so when your most powerful party member is off at a meeting with his patron. But Lefty might be finally getting his promotion, so it's not like he'd listen if the party told him no. Besides, no matter how difficult a fight is, it gets a lot easier when the enemies all have to advance through one choke point, and that choke point has double Hunger of Hadar plus a cloud of daggers. The fight was pretty much handled by the time Lefty showed up and joined back in, and he helped the group clean up the rest of the enemies. The party's next battle was made simple by surprising their opponents with an invisible imp attack, causing all of our enemies to lose their first turn of combat. It's time to face off against Ketheric Thorm, but first, Lefty used Armor of Agathis to get 15 temporary health, Pinky gave a Shield of Thralls to Jack so he had 10 temporary health, and Jack gave everybody combat inspiration since he gets all of his charges back on short rest anyways. The party short rested and headed through the door together. Thanks to Jack's combat inspiration, Bonk was able to get that extra 4 damage he needed to finish off our first enemy, and thanks to haste from Pinky, he took down Ketheric's dog in the same turn. Lefty knocked Ketheric Thorm off his feet with reverberation from an Eldritch Blast, and eventually dealt the last bit of damage required to force Ketheric to retreat to the Mind Flayer colony. As much as I wanted to chase him immediately, I had to make a quick stop first. I don't feel like fighting the Githyanki patrol after the Apostle of Merkel, so I lured them all together and butchered them. Alright, into the Mind Flayer colony we go. We started off by just attacking everything running around, and pretty much cleared the place out. While down here, I also grabbed the Resonance Stone because it might come in handy in Act 3. Then, Jack insisted that we save Zevlor, so we released him and a bunch of Mind Flayers at the same time. Pinky used her meta magic to twin cast haste onto Bonk and Lefty, leaving the Mind Flayers on the receiving end of a ridiculous number of magic missiles and Bonk's sword strikes. We won the fight and asked Zevlor to join us in the final battle, but he refused. We fully healed at the restoration tanks before heading in to the boss fight, and we started this fight by having Lefty blast the Mind Flayer off its high ground so we could take it down first. Bonk landed a critical hit, so I added a level 1 spell slot smite to it, and the Mind Flayer was gone. The Intellect Devourers were caught in Jack's cloud of daggers and took damage from Pinky's Illithid power, Cole the Weak. We freed the Night Song, only for her to heroically charge to Ketheric and just get slaughtered in record time. But Pinky had summoned Scratch, so we let our doggo revive Aelin every round until Ketheric Thorm had been defeated. At this point, Thorm becomes the Apostle of Merkel, and this fight was fairly difficult, but it was made a lot easier by blinding the Apostle of Merkel with Hunger of Hadar. This behemoth raked in 3 big heals during the battle and cast Finger of Death a couple times, but with Lefty raining down Eldritch Blasts every round, we finally managed to take the beast down, leveling all my characters to 9. Lefty picked up the Alert feat at level 9, Pinky boosted her charisma up to 18 and learned the Shatter spell, Bonk boosted his charisma up to 20 if you include the Hag's Hair +1 bonus, and Jack learned Lesser Restoration so he can be more of a hero, saving people in their time of need. Back at Moonrise Towers, Jack played music with Alfira one last time to cheer the kids up, because that's just the kind of guy he is. He's a hero. On the road to Baldur's Gate, my party has to save the Emperor from a bunch of Githyanki attackers, so we just blasted them to death as quick as possible, and the Emperor gave us the means to become partial Illithid. Both Pinky and Lefty opted to become partial Illithid and increase their power. Pinky consumed 5 more Illithid parasites, gaining the Displace power, Black Hole, Mind Blast, Mind Sanctuary, and Free Cast. And with that, my party of Warlocks stepped into Rivington, where each character's final destiny will be realized. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one whenever I get to it. Bye!